So today we're at Victorian Village. We're also at the Hay Incline Plain, which is this absolutely fantastic structure which took boats up from the River Severn all the way up to the Shropshire tugboat network. Today we're at Blists Hill, and this is a Victorian town. It's a bit of a recreation of a town. A lot of it's original, but some of it's not. It's quite a cool place with loads of history, and plays quite an important part in the Industrial Revolution. So let's pop in and have a look. Now the first thing you're going to see as we leave the entrance, which is just behind us there, is you're going to be able to tell this is a fictitious town. And that's because there's a bank here. So it can't be a real town, can it? Not these days. You can actually get some Victorian coins in there to spend, and then this takes you into this wonderful town. Now this is a mixture of existing, rebuilt, but most of this is a town that's been taken from various different areas and brick by brick been rebuilt. So when they were knocking it down in whatever town it was from, it's been saved and brought here. This was an area of industry, but not necessarily a lot of buildings like this, and you'll see that as we go up through. That's a lot better than losing these fantastic buildings, and keeps this heritage alive. Now this is an area that obviously has a lot of upkeep, and they can be supported via the website, which will go in the description, so please do have a look if you can, or better yet, pay a visit and advertise them on Facebook. They've got an iron foundry here which isn't working today. Basically it needs a team in here, and I spoke to the guy earlier. I've been here for a few hours now looking around, and he said that what they do is they've got a 2-week turnaround, and you can see the casts are all on the floor there, look. So they get all the casts ready, and then they do one big pour. So they do it in a traditional way. So they will come along with the molten iron, and they will pour it into the top of those casts. And then normally they're workable, I think he said in about 2 hours, but they leave it till the next day because it saves handling all the hot iron. It casts pretty quick. It takes about an hour to do all the casts they do, and they do quite a lot in one go. So by the time they get to the end, the first ones are already cool. But if you want to catch this in action, then I think you can book days where you can actually come and see it. But they make all sorts in here still. So they've got moulds here, look, you can see. They make signs and stuff for your house, which you can see just up on the beam up there. So you can make to order as well. So a lot of this site has working demonstrations on, as you'll see as we go around. This here is the pub, which you can see is one of the busiest parts of the site. Fair play. That pub's called the New Inn. That was my dad's neighbour's pub. My dad had a pub for 14 years. The pub next door was a New Inn, run by a lovely chap called Lionel. He's since retired, and the pub's actually gone now. My dad's pub was one of 4 existing. So to actually see old pubs kept, I know it's a bit different because it's been moved here, but it's quite cool to see. Right up ahead of us we have the old brick and tile works, which is actually closed off at the moment because it looks like they're restoring it. And below us here we have the Shropshire Canal, which we'll get into in a minute. So they would have made all your bricks and your tiles here. It would have been quite impressive in its time. The pictures I've got look like they are restoring the front buildings there, because the back buildings have already got the roofs on. It does look like the very, very back has got scaffolding on as well. So again, good for maintenance here, so another good reason to support them. These things need to be kept because we're slowly losing our industrial heritage, which is one reason why I like to cover things on here. It's an area I find incredibly interesting, and I really don't want to see lost. This would have been covered in old mine shafts and stuff in its time. And you can see just up ahead of us a working shaft. This is one of the original structures up here, and you'd have had a winch house in here going out to the actual lift just there. That lift would have had all these little carts going up and down into the shafts, collecting the coal or the iron ore from below, and then it would have come down through on these rails to wherever it needed to go to. With the canal behind us here, there would have been a wharf, and you would have had goods loaded up down to an area you will see very soon. This would have been how it was controlled. So you would have had the pistons here, look, turning the wheel, which would have turned the drum. There would be a cable going up through and out through that hole in the end to the left of the door, and that would have taken it into a cable up onto the rig outside, which would have dropped down and lifted the carts up and down on a little platform. Apparently this one's being restored as well, which is quite cool. They seem to be doing a lot of that you had the brick and tile place, there's a couple of other places which are actually closed at the moment. I think it's the time of year. I'm on a Wednesday today in midweek in term time, so this is a time when they'll be doing all the work. So if you come on a weekend or kind of in the summer holidays, I expect most of these things will be open. This is the Blists Hill incline lift, which I don't think was original either, but you can see at the top there, you've got like a little carriage on there, and that carriage sits on a cradle, and you can see how high it is on this end. So it's on an angle there, so when you come down here in that carriage, everything stays level in the bottom. And that's similar to how the inclined plane, which we'll go and have a look at in a minute, works. Can you hear that bird song? This is a lovely part of the site here. So you're in the woodlands here, you've got the hay inclined plane kind of just over there, and some of the other stuff just behind us. But I thought I'd have a little walk up into the woods, because they've got some quite cool stuff up in the woods as well. And have a look at this. So you've got some old trucks here, and into what would be a mine down here. You obviously can't go in there. I'm not sure if this was original or a reconstruction, but the area was heavily mined, so there's a good chance it is a real one. This site is really good at showing you how all these things worked, and it's well worth visiting. So bring the family along when you're in the area next. You can buy a ticket here which covers you for multiple sites, not just here, and that lasts all year, so it's worth it if you love your history. So right here we have another lift. It's a vertical lift, this one, and you can see just up there where it's held in, and there would have been, you can see at the top there, a wheel, and behind me is what would have been where the gears were, and that would have pulled a cable down into here and lifted this cart up through. And you can see there is a little wagon which would have gone down into the pits and been filled with goods. They would have been brought up to here and ran along these rails to wherever the goods needed to go to. You can see here where there's a little junction. So there's probably several of those in that hillside there. So this site has a fantastic area where you can see how pig iron was made and how wrought iron was made and all the processes behind it. And that all happens in behind here. And a lot of this is original down behind us. And these are the blast furnaces, which are absolutely incredible. It's so good to see these things sort of preserved and kept. And these are original. These are one of the original features on this site. And they were built between 1832 and 1840. By the Madeley Wood Company, and they were run by the Anstis family. They were 15 metres high. They employed several hundred people at a time. The product was pig iron, and what you do is you'd pour down from the tops up there. There's work going on here, so I can't really access it at the moment, but they would pour down the material from the top, so iron ore would go in the top and limestone and coke. So it would be layered up. You'd have coke, which is basically a coal, and then you'd have layers of the iron ore. It was lit from the bottom, and then out the bottom would come the pig iron, and they would be extracted twice a day, and this would operate for 24 hours a day. They'll have 2 teams on here working 12-hour shifts to maintain it. Used to blow in air from the ends, and there'd be engine houses on the side here, which kept the furnaces running to 1,300 degrees Celsius, and it would blow the air in to these furnaces. So the goods would have come in across the top there, and that is where the Shropshire Canal is, and we'll get to that in a minute. So then you have the ironworks. Now the ironworks were where the pig iron, which was made just in front of us there in those furnaces, was brought down, and you would bring it into the ironworks here, and this is a process going back about 4,000 years and lasted until about the 1850s, when sort of steel became a bit more used because it was a great versatility and was much cheaper to make. So you would bring it down here where you would heat it up, and you want to remove the impurities like the carbon, and about 1/4 of a tonne was thrown into the furnace and melted down to produce a puddle of molten iron. The inside of the furnace was lined with puddling cinder, which was rich in iron oxide, which triggered a reaction with the carbon in the iron, and the carbon burnt off of it, and it appeared on the top and used to dance with blue flames known as puddler's candles. They had to keep it moving at all times, which was not an easy job, and when it was judged to be at the right temperature, the puddler would have to come to nature it, and the white hot metal was divided into the furnace into 4 or 5 balls. One by one they were transferred onto a trolley and taken to the steam or shingling hammer. These balls were like sponge, and they were placed under a steam-driven hammer to form into rectangular shapes called a bloom. Repeated blows squeezed out slag and helped to weld together the grains of iron. The hammer itself was about 4 tons, but the force of it being driven down by the steam pressure took it to well over 20 tons of pressure. It was quite labour intensive and took 5 men to do all of that. And then after that, I went to these rollers, and the rollers were, as it may suggest, big rollers that put it through and then turned it into something called muck bar. This muck bar would then be cut down into different shapes and sizes, and that was then dependent on what you were going to use it for. This could then be returned to the furnace, where you could hammer it then into what you needed, and you could also grade it. Now, the very first bit that came out, the first muck bar that came out, was never very good, so that was very rarely sold to anybody, but the rest was all stamped, and there was about 4 or 5 different levels where you had triple best and best and very best, I think it was, and that was then sold for different amounts depending on the quality of it, obviously. So then on to the blacksmiths, like I say, where it was then turned, so you'd heat it up in the furnace at the back there, and then on the right hand side there at the back you can see an anvil. That's where you would hammer it into shape and make whatever you needed to in it. It could be work then drilled, and anything needed to be done. You've got a press just to the side here where you could also press it down. Sawmill and undertakers. You don't want to get those confused, do you? Behind us we've got a brick crusher. You can also crush stone as well. I know plenty of canal restorations that could do with one of these. For doing sort of towpaths and stuff like that, would be fantastic.
Engineering bricks are fluid side and very, very hard, made for different purposes. This, I'm not sure where that came from, but it could be an old house brick or something like that. Simple floor crusher to speed the engine up. Sorry about the dust.
So what we're on now is some of the remains of the Shropshire Canal. Now this was a canal built in 1792. And it wasn't a full-size canal, it was what's called a tugboat canal. So this is part of a much larger network of canals that were tugboat canals in the whole area, and this goes over what is now modern day Telford, and it linked up to all the way up to the Shrewsbury Canal, which was originally a tugboat canal as well. Now these tugboats were pulled in groups by horses. You could have about 20 of them per horse, and they were pulled down here. They were much smaller, and they were taken to something in front of us. Now they didn't really have locks on these canals, they used inclined planes quite a lot more, and up ahead of us we got a really impressive one, a Hay inclined plane, and that took the boats down the hill, which was going to be impossible to use locks on, to the River Severn, and they could take all the goods down and then be shipped off by river and stuff like that as well. It really is a truly fascinating area, this, and kind of covers all boxes of the Industrial Revolution. And this canal was eventually replaced by railways in many places, but areas like this survived until about 1912, when it was finally closed down. And here we have it at the top of the Hay inclined plane. Now this was quite an incredible feat of engineering at its time, and it was in 1788 that a competition was set up by the profiteers of the Shropshire Canal, and they basically wanted to figure out a way of raising and lowering heavy weights from one end to the other, and if that was successful they wanted to do it in 6 places. Now this amazing feat of engineering used only 4 people, and it took about 15 minutes to get a boat from the bottom down there. You won't be able to see, but right down through there is the bottom of the canal, and you put the boat into the bottom in a cradle, and it was attached to a chain on here, and that chain then pulled the boat up. Now there was a winding engine here if you needed it, but what the idea was, the weight for the carriage going down, which was laden with coal or iron or whatever was being brought down, would be enough to lift the boat by gravity up from the bottom. So that weight pushing down would pull on the chain and pull that boat up. Now this didn't always work, so the winding engine was definitely needed. There were stories here of boats that basically were so heavy when they were sent down that it carried on down through the other end of this and hit the canal at the bottom, and when it hit the bottom with so much force that it actually catapulted into the river below, and this River Severn sits just over the edge. It turns sharply to the left at the bottom of here, and then it the river runs parallel with it a bit further up. But this is incredibly cool. Look at that. I visited here a while back on my Canal channel and did quite a bit on this, so I'm not going to go too much into like the history of this and how it works and stuff. You can view that, I'll put the link in the description. But I came here mainly to see this, but the rest of the site is fantastic, and the museum here offers so much from a point of view of history of the area. I know it's not exactly an actual proper village, some of it was here, but other bits of it were added to it, but it kind of gives you that idea of how things were in these sort of traditional villages back then, and it's worth the entrance fee just for this. Great news, I am now on Patreon. Not only can you get the stuff from Court Exploring, which will be in the members area when it's here, but you'll also get all the stuff from Court Above the Cut. All the members only stuff will go in there as well. So you get both channels for one price. And the other thing is as well, I charge 5 different levels, but you choose what you pay. Everybody gets the same content. So please pop over to Patreon now to support me. It's a great way to support this channel and the work I do. Thank you very much. This was restored, I believe, in 75 and again in 1990, but it probably does need a bit of love again. You can see the rails are gone on that other side and the sleepers are starting to rot out and stuff. It'd be quite cool to see that engine house rebuilt as well. That's not happening at this time. So when this was all recommended to be closed, they built a railway at the bottom here. But yeah, this is a bit of a different one. This channel I want to do a little bit of everything really, a bit of industrial history, railways, linked into the Canal channel in some way, which this one does a little bit with this, and maybe a bit more older stuff as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please do let me know what you'd like to see on this channel in the description. It is a bit of a newer format for me, so happy to have suggestions. If you're part of a heritage railway or any groups that are preserving heritage, please do contact me. My email is in the description, or put a comment below. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great day.